This is the Balanced Dilemma. We tackle the often uniquely, but not always, female dilemma, managing life, work, family, and self. I'm Maura Carlin.
And I'm Christie Derrico. At the Balanced Dilemma, we speak with women and men to hear their balanced stories. Our guests are entrepreneurs, reinventors, creators, executives, parents, and partners, telling us what we really want to know. How the heck did they manage that? And can you have it all and all at the same time?
Motherhood. It's a job and a journey with twists and turns and multiple stages. And yet it never really ends. But some of those transitions can feel like endings. The last baby bottle or stroller, the first day of elementary school, or the emptying of the nest. That is when the kids start leaving home. Today's guest turned her experience into a book, Miserable Mom, The Do's and Don'ts of Sending Your Kid to College. Consider it a version of what to expect 18 years after you're expecting. Sharon Brecher began writing and creating right after dropping her daughter at university, looking at the absurdities, emotions, and contradictions in this stage of motherhood with wry and self-deprecating humor. And just as her prior career in education may not have prepared Sharon for Miserable Mom's Instagram memes, neither did raising kids get her ready for their departure. And by the way, she's not actually miserable. Sharon, welcome to the Balanced Dilemma.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
That's great. Now, you have a master's in education. You worked as an educational director and consultant, creating educational content. But at some point, you gave that up. When and why?
So when my kids, I have two kids, and when they were about 7 or 8 and 4 or 5, I lost my mother to cancer. And we, at the same time, made a decision. We had been bi-coastal, and we made a decision to move to the other coast from where our families were. And I just, after understanding how precious time is, made the decision that I wanted to be home with my kids, and fortunately was able to do that. So that's what I did.
Is that something that you thought you would do someday, or was this just out of the blue and a reaction, or something different?
Yes. So I don't know that I had it all mapped out, but I think that I've kind of always been open to, whatever path makes sense at the time. So I loved the work that I was doing, and when I was consulting, I was able to do that from home while the kids were little, and as long as that was working, I was happy to do that. When the time constraints and all of that became too much, and I felt like I had to make a decision, I did that. So, yes.
So it sounds like you squeezed in a little bit of work, but it wasn't full-time out of the home.
Correct. That's right.
Did your mother work outside the home?
She did. She did for years. And she loved it, and was able to be both a great mother and a hard worker outside of the home. I think she probably worked as hard or harder at home than she did outside of the home, because that's the way it goes when you're raising a family, right?
Definitely. So did your experience of being a child with a working mom influence you in the decision that you made that you might want to spend some time being at home more than instead of being at an office environment or in a workplace?
There is no question that my mom had a huge impact on the things that I did. She was, and the decisions that I made. She was an amazing, present mom, whether she was working outside of the house or not. I felt like she was always there, and that was really important to me. I wanted to always be there for my kids as well, or at least have them feel that I was always there. And I think that she did the things that she needed to do at the time, and that would make her happy at the time, and I respected what I saw.
Over the years, did you have any regrets about giving up the working mom title?
So, yes. And when I was working, when they were little, I had regrets that I wasn't home for every single gurgle and all of that stuff if I had a meeting that I had to go to. So I think that I came to a place where I felt like I had to stop judging myself and judging other people, and just kind of accept that, you know, we do what we can do and try to have as much fun as we're doing it and try to be a good example for the kids as best we can.
I'm curious whether you had that feeling of failing at both things when you were working outside the home and being a mom, that, you know, no matter what you did, you weren't fulfilling whatever you were supposed to be doing.
Totally. I mean, I think that we all have a lot of that as moms, is that whatever you're doing, there's always this, you know, other thing about what else you should be doing. And that is a really challenging thing for us to, you know, not beat ourselves up over. And I, for sure, you know, was guilty of always feeling like maybe I should be working more, maybe I should be, you know, spending more time with the kids or whatever. But that's kind of life, and it's all a big balance, right? That's your show. It's all a big balance and making it work.
Well, when in this epiphany phase, when did this happen? Were you working, or were you at home, or what caused it, and what time frame was it?
So honestly, I started to figure out a lot of how I felt about motherhood and working and being home during the process of writing my book, funnily enough, because it gave me the opportunity to sit back and kind of think through and write about all of the things that mattered to me and the thoughts that went through my head. And I realized that, you know, if I was thinking these things, that other people probably were too. And that's kind of how it turned into a book. You know, it's a very raw and honest account about my emotions of, you know, letting go and raising kids and how I felt about all of that, with lots of humor mixed in. But it's raw. And I think it just kind of is, in a lot of ways, a tale of motherhood.
Before we get more into the book, I did want to ask you, we were just talking about, you know, the dilemma of feeling like you needed to do more at work and more at home. Do you think that's unique to motherhood as opposed to fatherhood? Like, did your husband experience the same thing?
Yes, for sure. You know, my husband is a very hands-on dad. And he is also an exceptional professional. And I think that at times, you know, one of those things that you're managing, that you know, if there's something going on, and that's what takes precedence, of course it's hard to, you know, do everything perfectly at all times. So I don't know that it's only a mom thing. I definitely think that it is a dad thing or a caregiver thing also. But I do know that moms are way more vocal about it and probably feel it sometimes more acutely, or at least discuss it more.
You know, you just used a word, perfectly, and it touches upon something that we have discussed here on The Balanced Dilemma. Are women sometimes striving to make things too perfect, whether it's at work or at home? And in instances where fathers might be stay-at-home dads, there's this relaxation that you have to just accept how they do it instead of us gatekeeping and making things exactly organized the way we want it. Do you feel that you might have been trying to achieve perfection when maybe you should have just relaxed a little?
Yes. Yeah. I remember sitting in a mommy and me class and having the woman who was running the class say, if you are going out and you're going to leave the kids with your husband or whoever, that if they don't put your child in the perfect outfit or feed them the right amount of teaspoons of whatever, to just say thank you and be happy that you were afforded the time to go out. And I've kind of tried to keep that throughout life and parenting, and I just think that it makes for a little better breathing.
Right, saying thank you. So we're going to take a break, and we'll be back, and we're going to get right into your book. You're listening to The Balanced Dilemma. We are speaking with author Sharon Brecher about her book, Miserable Mom. Sharon, so you get home from dropping your eldest at college and literally the next day sit down to write. Tell us about that.
So my book is called Miserable Mom, as you said, the do's and don'ts of sending your kid to college. And it's a book for parents that encompasses the period of time from preparing your kid to move out, to moving into the dorm, to returning home without them. And that time is wrought with emotion. And the book's about the hilarious ways those emotions come out during this phase of parenting. In addition to my raw and honest story, there are funny do and don't illustrations that depict various scenarios that show the appropriate ways one would expect to behave under these circumstances and the more realistic ways that I and other moms actually behave. And all of that was rolling around through my head about the ways that I was acting and the ways that I wasn't acting and the ways I saw my friends acting. And I had so much emotion when I dropped my daughter off at school that I had time to say, and I came home and I quite literally woke up early the next day and sat down at my computer and I just started typing. And it was not to write a book. It was just to get my feelings and my thoughts and my emotions out on paper. And I wrote for months, actually. And I enjoyed describing the ways that I behaved and the more honest things that I thought about. And then I had the idea for the visual illustrations, which is how I came up with the do's and don'ts. I had a professor in college who always said, show me, don't tell me. And I thought that was a great way to do it. And I just started kind of posting stuff on Instagram to see if there was an audience for this, just kind of for fun. And I was getting a good reaction. And so I kept on going and kind of morphed into a book.
So, Maura and I both write, and we've been dabbling in this. And you've explained that this started maybe in a diary format or an emotional outlet. But at some point it became a book. So did you outline this, or did you take the material that you had and put it into some type of organization? How did you go from what I would read as a diary outlet to something that actually became what we have in front of us?
So I tried to once I decided that I wanted to do the illustrations, I wanted to let the illustrations tell the tale of the chaotic emotions that I was feeling and or seeing in a funny way, because I thought that that would be a good way to show, different ways that people, act when they're feeling incredibly emotional. And it can be really quite funny when you step back, even when, sometimes when you're in your deepest emotions and you step back, you're like, oh, I can't believe I did that. At the same time, I was filled with emotion. And I realized that when I looked at what I was writing, that there were true emotions that I was feeling just before I brought my daughter off to college. And then when I was actually there, it changed a little bit. And then when I came home and had the new, the new me, the new stuff happening, that was yet another period of time. And and then, of course, life starts happening again, right? Because it has to. I mean, that's what you hope is going to happen, is that life goes on as normal.
And did you, sometimes we refer to this as the process, okay? So some writers will describe a very regimented system where some write at night, some write in the morning. Stephen King has this saying that you write with the door closed, you edit with the door open. What was your process? Did you sit down every morning, or did a feeling come upon you? What was the actual process of writing this book?
The actual process was when something came into my head and I thought that it mattered, I wrote it down. And that could look like me sitting at my computer and just writing and writing and writing and writing. Or it could be me, out for coffee with a friend and somebody says something and I think, oh, that's a good one or that's funny. And I put it in my phone and then I would go home the next day and look at it. And if it still resonated, I would write about that. And if it didn't resonate, I tossed it. And so it was kind of, yeah.
You mentioned a professor in college saying, show, don't tell. Did you study writing in college or have any background with writing?
I was an English major in college. And when I worked as a consultant for Disney Interactive and Disney Online, I wrote guides for parents and that sort of thing. But never did I do this kind of an endeavor, a creative writing thing, and the illustrations as well were completely new to me.
Pretty impressive.
Right. So this is largely a graphic novel for mothers or parents. Are you an artist?
Well,
you are now. Tell us about your art training.
Accept that. None. Truly none. So when I had the idea for the do's and don'ts, I started with just writing out what the do's and don'ts were. And I showed them to my husband and my kids, and they were like, this is a lot of description to read. It's hard for me to get in your head. So I realized I had to do something better and different to get my point across. And so I quite literally, took out my kids' old, crayons and pencils and all of that stuff and just started drawing them and cutting out pictures and pasting them just to get what I saw in my head down on paper. And then my husband got me an iPad Pro and an Apple Pencil, and I learned how to use that, even though I was terrified. And, learned how to use Procreate, and the rest is history. I just started learning how to do it and started really enjoying it and having a little bit of a knack for it.
You said something I thought was so interesting. There is this phenomenon, let's call it, called fan fiction, right? And you put something out there and you get feedback, and that draws the material. So you said you put it on Instagram, you got feedback. It's a little bit of fan-based response. How did that work? What did people tell you about what you were putting out there, and how did you incorporate that in your material?
So I had a lot of people look at my posts and tell me that they felt the same way. They thought it was funny because they could relate, that kind of stuff. And so I realized that, the more honest I could be about what I was thinking about a given thing, the more other people could relate. And it didn't matter if they agreed or not, but they at least knew where I was coming from.
Got it.
Why miserable mom? Not scared, worried, sad?
Because I was...
Miserable?
I guess miserable. Yeah, I was miserable. Well, I was miserable at the thought of what could be, what could come, the unknown. I was scared. I was all of the things that you said.
Okay, Sharon, we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to talk about the emotions a little more and the response that you got from other people. You're listening to The Balanced Dilemma. We're speaking with Sharon Brecher, the author of Miserable Mom. Sharon, being miserable, it almost seems as though it was the anticipation that was worse than the reality. Is that the case?
Absolutely, as is often the case in life. People ask me all the time if I'm truly miserable, and the answer is no, I'm not. I'm actually quite happy. I use miserable tongue-in-cheek. It's a representation of those moments that make you feel anything, sad, angry, vulnerable, even happy in those inopportune moments, and being willing to view them through a humorous lens.
If you were to assign a percentage, how many people felt the way you did and how many didn't?
Let's see. Well, it's probably Biased because my audience tends to relate to me. So
Fair
I would
enough.
say maybe 70-30, 60-40. I mean, I've certainly had many people say to me, you didn't want, you were worried about it. I couldn't wait for it. And I'm like, great. Like, of course. So then you can't wait, but you still have those emotions. It's what makes us feel, how we feel about our kids leaving the nest. And that can be anything. This book is my story, but it's intended to make the reader think about their story.
But Sharon, you're really touching upon something that I think we try to tap into here. And we often ask people, if you could speak to your 20-year-old self, what would you say? Because if we could rewind the clock, often things that we build up and get so nervous about don't really end up the way we expected. So it reads a little bit here like you're trying to soften the anxiety for others going through this experience. Was that your intention?
So I think that is something that I have been told has happened. People read it and do feel like they have a friend in arms going through it. And I think that by writing it, I was kind of doing that for myself. In a lot of ways, I probably was talking to myself. And I think that's why it can resonate with people, because it's just real. It's just the things that we either think or wish we knew. And I do like the idea of being there for people as they're going through this. I've had a lot of people say to me, this is the book I needed at this point in time, because it was real. And I know I'm not crazy because I'm not the only one that thought these things. And it's hysterical because I saw my friend do that or whatever. It's just, you're not alone, right? Nobody wants to be alone in this world. So to be able to take something that is incredibly emotional and take a step back and name it and laugh and know that you're not alone takes the air out. It just helps you to get through stages. It does for me anyway.
Right. And your entire subject matter, college and our children, it would be impossible to do a show like ours where we talk about motherhood, not to talk about college. It is something that's built up. It's a goal. Many of us, they say we feel our own self-worth through the achievements of our children. Tell us about this anxiety of the college application process. Did you feel, was this book and what you wrote about like deflating after such a big buildup?
I'm sorry. What do you mean exactly? Can you repeat that?
You tell us about the college process and the anxieties around that you experienced with your children.
Because you write in the book about the testing and retaking, or advising people about how many times to retake the test. That's what Christie's sort of getting to, the process that kind of drives a lot of parents crazy.
Absolutely. So in the book, I just talk about how, the studying for the exams was very difficult, for the kids, because there's a ton of pressure on high school students when they're going through this. And I am one to not like it when my kids are, feeling pressure or anxious or whatever. And it's not necessarily because what I think they should or should not be doing or achieving. It's because of what they want and their desires and where they want to get in life and that sort of thing.
Did you absorb some of that anxiety?
Of course. It's kind of, to me, that's kind of what I do as a parent, is to help, I kind of would let them voice to me what was going on so that I could kind of hold on to that for them so that they could move on and do whatever the next thing is. And then I sit and think about what their anxiety was or whatever. So, yeah, of course, it's a tough process. But so for my book, it's really not about that process. What it's about are those emotions because of the process. It's about what the mom feels when all this craziness is going on around you and you have to deal with it.
So this process and how you felt, Did it surprise you? Were you unprepared? I mean, I referenced before a follow-up to what to expect when you're expecting, the book that everyone reads when they're pregnant. There are lots of stages of parenthood along the way. Were you unprepared for this?
So, look, everybody has to have their own, journey going through all this. And I did look for books about the process, but not about you have to take the exam, you have to buy the clothes to move them into the dorm. I was looking for the way that a mom would feel going through all of this. The emotions, the thoughts about, oh, my God, my kid has been under my roof for, 18 years is no longer going to be under my roof anymore, and making decisions. And, oh, my God, did I teach him? Did I teach her everything that they need to know about sex or drugs or laundry or all of that? And I couldn't find that specifically. And that was what I wanted. That was the book that I needed for me.
Now, something about the book or about the process, you were affected by your own mother's death. Can you tell us about how that affected you and, this whole process of letting your daughter go? And we'll get to your son later.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what I've come to, realize is that I wrote a book about letting go. I've had people tell me that they have young children who are sending their kids off to kindergarten for the first time and have read my book and said, oh my God, I felt all of those emotions, because it's emotions. And what my mother did was she taught me how to feel my feelings. And she taught me how to accept that it was okay to feel your feelings. And God, I wish that she was here to actually see the book. But I will tell you that she was sitting on my shoulder the entire time. And I really believe that she was, with me throughout.
With you in spirit.
A lot of it is a lesson.
So
yeah.
We are obviously from a different generation than our children. Did your mother have a similar experience when you went to college, or do you think that experience has changed for parents?
Oh, I think that the experience, of the stuff that I went through to get to college was very different than what my kids went through to get to college, in like the anxiety and the testing and the AP classes and all of that kind of stuff. The emotions of, me moving out and, wondering about how our relationship might or might not change or grow or what, just the unknown. I think that probably carries through. At least it did for us.
Okay. What about, talking about motherhood, do you feel it's more competitive now than it was when you were younger, and it almost becomes competitive motherhood in addition to competitive for the kids?
Yes, and I hate that. We need to be propping each other up, not competing. And that's kind of what this book is trying to do also, is like anybody can be a miserable mom, right? And, in addition to the book, I do midlife unfiltered stuff about sagging boobs and all that kind of stuff, and wrinkles, and all of that stuff is on my Instagram. Or questionable parenting is another thing I do, and it's all the crazy stuff I do with, to or around my kids or my husband or the dog. Or
and
whatever.
Sharon, we're going to talk about all of the Instagram memes and everything when we come back in a moment. You're listening to The Balanced Dilemma. We're speaking with author Sharon Brecher. But before we get back to our talk, Christie's going to tell us about where you can find us, The Balanced Dilemma.
They can find us at thebalanceddilemma.com, where you can listen to old episodes and sign up for our newsletter, find show announcements, show notes, resources, and further reading. Follow us on social media at The Balanced Dilemma Podcast on Facebook and LinkedIn. Podcast episodes are also available for listening on Apple iTunes, Google, and Spotify. Please rate us and share us with friends.
And Sharon, this would be the perfect time for you to tell everyone where they can get their book, your book, and where they can find you.
Thank you. So you can get my book on Amazon. Just type in Miserable Mom, the do's and don'ts of sending your kid to college. Or you can get it on Barnes & Noble, or you can go on my Instagram and buy it through my link in my Instagram bio. And my website is miserablemoms.com, and my Instagram account is @miserablemoms.
Great. Now, you have a second child who also went to college.
Yes. Yes.
Was it different? Was your experience different the second time around? And was it perhaps, or not, because of gender, because your first was your daughter and your second was your son?
So it was in some ways similar, and in a lot of ways also very different. And my intention was always to write I literally have enough emotion and feeling about my son to write a second book about it. I just never knew when I set out to write a book how long it would take. So my son, there was a whole host of things. But first of all, when he went off to college, I had all of those emotions. And then, because he was the youngest, I was an empty nester. So you can imagine all the chaotic feelings that I was feeling. And he's my son. Yeah. And then COVID hit, and that changed the experience completely. And now he's about to graduate. And so talk about emotions. My baby is going to be graduating from college, and that is just insane to me. I'm so proud of him. And you probably have just heard my voice, catch a little bit. I can't believe it.
Well, I think one of the funny pictures in your book is actually before he goes to college, but your daughter's gone. You talk about don't force your younger child to become your older child, and you have your son in his baseball hat sitting miserably, I might add, in a nail salon with you. And that, but didn't you also learn that when they're at college, they're actually home a lot? And there's a transition there every single time they come home and every single time they leave?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And with that, there is a whole host of additional emotions that I never knew I would feel about them coming home. From, everything from I can't wait for them to get here to when are they going back? The house is a mess.
And garbage bags that serve as suitcases and distinguishing between the two. But I have a question for you two ladies, because you've had an experience that I have not had. What are some of the differences between girls going to college and boys? My youngest has not gone to college, and I only have the girl experience.
And I only have the boy experience. So, Sharon, you get to enlighten us.
That leaves me. I will tell you, so many differences, but one of that, I don't know that this is how it is for everybody, but for me, when my daughter was getting ready to go off to college, she wanted to talk to her roommate about their bedding and what color it was going to be and where they were going to put everything and what they were going to be doing. And she just was so prepared and cared about every little detail. And my son was like, yeah, I guess I do need bedding. Whatever you find is fine for me.
Okay, I will share that my experience was exactly the same. The girls, their rooms were decorated to the nines, and sometimes it looked like Candyland vomit, but the boys couldn't have cared less.
Right. I imagine that's how it's going to be.
It's okay, Christie.
So here's another question. Do they call you as much as the girls? And Maura can't comment on this, but my daughters call, text, constantly in contact. My son sometimes has to be encouraged. When he's gone to camp, it's like, hello, are you there? What's it like when they go to college?
Oh, I have some bad news for you. I'm really sorry, but I'll be like, hi, honey, just want to make sure, just want to say hello, make sure all is good. And then, a couple hours later, honey, did you get my last text? I send up smoke signals. Honey, you there? So, and I'm kidding, of course, because, yes, of course, he does respond back, but not even close to, my daughter, I'm typing, how was your day? And I see the bubbles immediately. They're just different.
The irony is that for all the time they take responding to us, if we don't respond to them immediately, it's like, are you okay, Mom? What's going on? Are you mad at me?
That's right. That's right.
So you're about to hit yet another transitional stage, and I want to know how you're handling that as you're going to be helping plan a wedding for your daughter. How does that feel?
Oh, my gosh. It feels like I'm getting really old. It's so exciting, and I got to tell you, I am once again filled with all of this emotion and thought about, about everything, you name it, about, life and what's to come and all of that. And at the same time, my son is graduating and he has a job and will be moving to another state. And that is all of this emotion and everything. So I have a lot to learn about how to handle all of this new stuff.
Well, planning a wedding is a new experience. And are there things that you thought you would have to do that you don't, or things that you thought that you would have expected to happen differently? What's come your way?
They just literally got engaged recently. So a lot of I think there's a lot to come. And I don't even know what I am expecting. But I'm sure that whatever I don't even realize I'm expecting will have its challenges and changes and all of that stuff.
But Sharon, it really is a different stage where I think, and maybe you're not feeling it yet, of when they're getting married, they're really on their own. They launch. It's not,
Right.
Do you have that feeling like, wow, this really is, she's gone?
Yeah,
or am I depressing you?
I know, geez. You know what? I will tell you that I thought when my son went off to college, because he's the youngest, I became an empty nester then. And now I feel more so like I'm becoming an empty nester because my daughter's getting married and my son is graduating from college. And that feels like all of a sudden way more empty nestying. But what I am going to assume, because it helps to keep me sane, is that my kids will remain my kids, and that we will still have the amazing relationships that we have, and they will change, of course, and they will morph. But I'm just going to assume that it's all going to keep going in a positive, exciting direction.
So tell us,
if I think of anything else, I won't be able to.
Can you share with us some of the great stuff about being an empty nester?
Oh, my God. Yeah. I mean, there's a million things. My husband and I have so much fun, and we're back to doing things like going bike riding and hiking and taking long walks and drinking coffee in bed and going out for dinner and not having to rush home and, all of that stuff. So there's a lot of things that are great about being an empty nester. The book is about the kids and, becoming the empty nester. And so that's why I talk more about that stuff. But, oh, my God. Yeah, that's the whole point, is that now now it's a new stage. It's a new phase, and we can spend more time. My husband and I spend so much more time doing, focusing on us again, which is amazing.
So do you ever sit back and feel a little bit of accomplishment? I mean, as we're talking to you, you've made it. You've launched 2 children.
And written a book.
But your 2 children, you set out to raise them, achieve milestones with them, and they've done it. Do you ever just sit back and take stock of that?
Yeah, I mean, I do. And I am so proud of both of them, truly. And what I am most proud of is the fact that, I have a really beautiful, and as does my husband, we have really beautiful relationships with both of our kids. And that's what it's all about as far as I'm concerned. So the fact that they're good people and they're caring people and they love each other, that's what really mattered to me. And so I feel really great about that, for sure.
Yes, we've heard that phrase, raising solid citizens, and that is a goal for all of us. But we asked some questions here at the Balance Dilemma, so I'm going to pose one to you. Sharon, do you think you can have it all and all at the same time?
Oh, my God. I think that is an amazing thing to strive for. I think that having it all can happen, but at the same time can be challenging. And I think that if you can be flexible in what various stages require of you and what you have to give, then you can have it all over a lifetime, not necessarily at the exact same time. That's for me.
So how do you feel about having become an influencer as we hit our last minute? It goes so quickly.
I think it's really fun. I mean, I think it's fun because the things I joke around about in my Instagram are things that I'm really, dealing with, which is, everything from menopause, like I said before, to sagging boobs and wrinkles and having the kids come home and my husband not knowing where we keep the spoon that we've had for the past 40 years.
Right. You're talking about the full motherhood experience, and we want to thank you so much for joining us, Sharon.
Thank you, Sharon.
This is Balanced Dilemma. I'm Maura Carlin.
And I'm Christie Derrico.